And now let us look into an example of alternative routes into higher education for refugees. The Kiron Open Higher Education. Let's welcome Florian Rampelt, Director of Education at Kiron. Welcome. The stage is yours.
Here we go. Yes, perfect. Thanks a lot for setting such a nice framework. That means that I don't have to talk too much about guidelines and frameworks anymore. And I'm especially happy that the final outcome I took away from the discussion we just had, that even though we talk a lot about tools implemented, about guidelines implemented, in the very end, it's about very social aspects. It's about trusting each other, trusting your students, and focusing on the learning outcomes and the competencies that we get out of educational programs. I also would like to focus on the student's perspective today, and I think you cannot see. Yes, you have to see what Sashida also wrote on that piece of paper. I think a lot of what we do is about what Sashida, a current student from Syria, states here. It's not only the desire, the hope of becoming an engineer one day, entering the labor market in a host community, in a host country, or even after her return to Syria, but it is also about really achieving it. And I will. I hope you can read that just under the line there. Before I joined Kiron, I was working at a university myself, and Malmö kind of reminds me of it, because it was the University of Passau, which is directly at the border to Austria. So, such as Malmö, it is a key entrance point for refugees, and it has been for quite a long time. Not only in 2015 and 2016, we actually founded an initiative already in 2011, when I was still a student, trying to support refugees, not only on a community level, but also refugees who wanted to enter higher education. And what we faced is a lot of different barriers, a lot of barriers we have been talking about already today, and a lot of written down solutions, but a lot of challenges still being open for these students. And this is why I joined Kiron as a volunteer in 2015, because I thought there must be ways, there must be approaches to cater the needs of these thousands of highly capable young people who want to achieve something, who want to change the narrative of being a refugee to the narrative of being a student, a valuable member of society, someone who can also contribute to the host communities, and doing that as soon as possible. I think we heard quite often today already, a key issue is the matter of time. So we do have certain capacities, we do have certain legal frameworks, but very often there's a lot of time that students, prospective students and refugees have to wait. And Kiron tried to form a bridge for those who are waiting, and to use digital solutions in order to enable access to higher education, and also to enable successful learning for refugees who are our target group. We therefore chose an approach that tries to combine innovation in higher education, with quality and quality assurance. It's quite an interesting mixture when you work in a startup, and you have those with the startup spirit, and you have those like me who really love quality assurance and have been doing accreditation for quite some years. But I think we very often are not aware of the innovative potential quality measures actually have, and everything that has been presented to you today actually has for innovation. The core Kiron model is that refugees who at a given moment are not able to access higher education, to enter a formal degree program at a university, can start studying online using so-called massive open online courses that are provided from different platforms worldwide, from universities, from Sweden, from Germany, from the United States, the Netherlands, a lot of countries we have out there. And the key for Kiron is that through that approach, we can not only enable a faster access to educational offers, but we also need to make sure that it is connected to a perspective directly linked to the formal degree. In our case, it's a bachelor's degree, and it's the normal bachelor's degrees that partner universities of Kiron offer. Kiron is not a university. It's an educational provider, an educational platform that clusters MOOCs and works together with our partners on the recognition of the MOOC-based modules that we provide to our students. By now, we have more than 2,000 students registered on Kiron campus. These students had to go through an application process that is as open as possible, as closed as needed. Especially one of the major learnings we had at the very beginning was that we do need a language test on English, which is the main language of our MOOCs currently, and that we do need a strong student guidance from the very beginning, which means our students have to fill in a motivation questionnaire and answer some reflection tasks before they actually enter our study program. Students at Kiron are enrolled in currently 5 study tracks: business and economics, computer science, mechanical engineering, political science, and social work. We chose these study tracks based on evaluations, on questionnaires we gave to refugee camps throughout Germany and Jordan. One of the major outcomes, we heard it today already, was that there's a high demand for medicine, for example, and architecture. We tried that out, but stopped it quite quickly because in order to provide a high-quality curriculum, we were not able to collect and cluster the sufficient amount of MOOCs that we needed for it. Key of the Kiron educational offer is an online study program. So our approach is that no matter what obstacles a refugee is facing, he or she needs online access and an online device, being a computer or a phone. We highly recommend that there's a computer infrastructure, and then they can start studying on our platform. We have developed, and I'm especially proud of that, looking at how often learning outcomes have been mentioned today already. We have developed a platform and a recommendation algorithm behind our learning platform that is fully based on learning outcomes. So we cluster MOOCs based on the learning outcomes into modules, and our students entering one of our study programs get recommendations on what to study, which MOOCs to take, which modules to complete, based on the learning outcomes they intend to achieve within these modules. It is crucial to emphasize that especially for displaced populations, for non-traditional learners, massive open online education can only succeed if you manage to balance out scalability and personalization. There are, I don't know who of you already took a MOOC and who of you already ever completed a MOOC. There are huge dropout rates within massive open online courses, and we therefore developed a concept that puts the student in the focus and that provides student service according to the needs of our students, that really ensure that our students can be successful within an online learning environment. Key of this conference is the impact of refugees on the Bologna process. And I also, as we had before, am very grateful that we focus on this way, refugees having an influence on the Bologna process. And I think they do have a very strong influence on how we see and how we work out the Bologna reform. And through the whole difficult and challenging process of getting recognition of prior learning done for our students, we learned a lot on how we can change not only frameworks, but how we can change recognition cultures and how we can change an institutional and an individual approach that we make things happen. I think that would be one of the major advices looking at the question before is trust each other and just get going. Start things. The opportunities, the possibilities are out there. Key for that is that you need collaboration. Kiron, when it started in 2015, started with a list of MOOCs, not a modularized curriculum, and the aim to get up to 120 ECTS recognized. this was not that easy to communicate to potential university partners because, and there we are on the social level again, there was a strong feeling of giving away ownership of learning. And based upon this experience and the experience of our education team, mainly coming from higher education institutions, we developed a model that made sure that the ownership of learning, the ownership of the credentialization, of the validation at the very end lies within the accredited higher education institution. We therefore lowered the number of recognizable modules to 60 ECTS, which is 1/3. Up to 60 ECTS from Kiron online-based modules can be recognized at partner universities. Partner universities allow our students to enter their degree programs based on the very regular application processes. There are no exemptions. There are the processes that we get presented already by KMK. There is tests like the aptitude test, test us that our students also have to take. And then, as part of the perspective I mentioned earlier, our students can get recognized up to two semesters of studies and finalize a regular bachelor's degree at the partner university within 2 years instead of 3 years. For that, we modularized the MOOCs. We assigned credit points, the workload, which still is key at the moment, maybe it will change one day, to the MOOCs based on 25 hours workload, which is the lower border of what we all use. And we attributed learning outcomes to all of this. Key also is, once again, Kiron modules as the overall modularization approach. Kiron modules are recognized by our partner universities. We know the frameworks that are being used for that, and we use the frameworks for it. Key for our partner universities is also that they do not have to start with the recognition itself. Talking about recognition cultures, talking about all the barriers that refugees are facing, we know that it is a process of establishing trust amongst each others. So very often with our now 41 university partners, we start by just signing a memorandum of understanding, an intent that we want to do something together. And then bottom up from the faculty level, which is key for recognition processes, we look at the Kiron study programs and look at the possibility of recognition of prior learning. As a result of that process, we sign learning agreements, as you all know them from Erasmus, for example, and then have students apply for universities and hopefully get credits recognized. That is a typical feedback form. I had been using similar forms at university before. I think it is important that even though you go new pathways, you need to ensure that also some structures are comparable to the structures implemented, because mostly they're also quite well thought out. What Kiron has further developed is approaches towards the credibility of the recognition process of MOOC-based curricula. There is, the European Commission is quite strong on research in this field. I recommend to all of you a JRC publication on the validation of digital learning. And we are currently working on using a so-called traffic light model that is setting quality standards for the recognition of a MOOC. And a very significant development for Kiron within a project funded by the German Federal Ministry of Education and Research was that we developed so-called MOOClets that use the tools of the European higher education area and mirror MOOCs that we use from all over the world in the standards that we require, and make sure that there is trust amongst the institutions and the individuals who in the very end recognize the learning outcomes from Kiron. The transfer process has two main triggers. One is we look at the workload completed by our students, and the other one is an individual request by our students, and it ends with the partner university application, the normal formal processes at the partner university, and hopefully the ECTS recognition. Of course, one of the most important questions usually raised when we talk about the recognition of prior learning is, Sounds nice, but does it actually work? And we do have, although we only started 1.5 years ago, we do have best practice examples already. Ahmad Mobayet was one of our highest performing students who only within 6 months completed 23 MOOCs, and just at the beginning of this year, after a still 5-month recognition process, he got 30 ECTS from these 6 months recognized. What is also very interesting regarding the application process is that he published an academic paper in the Oxford Journal of Interrupted Studies. And that paper was used as part of his plausibility check of his educational background, because he was also lacking some of the documents. And we think that this is also very important, that through offers such as Kiron's offers, you can make plausibility checks easier, because students, and that is applicable to international students in general, can prove through digital learning that they're actually capable of successfully studying within your institutions. This is just a brief overview of the universities we are currently working with. And I cannot emphasize that enough, is that innovation is not about a new young provider who is causing disruption all over, but it is about strong networks. And it is about coming together here and agreeing upon trust building. 2 weeks ago, I was in London talking to a British network on the recognition of prior learning, and trust was the key outcome there as well. And it is also the key focus for us. Within Germany, which is our proof of concept country, but also internationally, supported by the British government, working in Jordan and Lebanon, for example, it is key that we put together our resources, that we come together with our ideas, and I think then, with the expertise coming from different sides, we can really just get going and move things maybe a little faster than they have been moving so far. I was also asked to present some key challenges, and you will most probably have guessed already what these are. Examination within digital learning settings is highly disputed. There are several different standards. In Germany, for example, we do not only have like 23 states that you have been talking about before. We have 16 states within Germany that have different standards on recognition and on types of examination, for example, that can be used for the recognition of prior learning, although the Standing Conference is doing very great work on providing recommendations on prior learning. And for that, Kiron is setting up an examination model that is, on the one side, guaranteeing high-quality examination and proctoring in online-based settings, and testing examination models with partner universities that, on the other side, also make sure that universities who request offline module-based examinations can do that. One example is RWTH Aachen, one of the strongest engineering universities in Germany, who has just mirrored a course that they offer for all their hundreds of students in mechanical engineering into a MOOC environment. And they opened that up for Kiron students and for Erasmus students. And then these students who took the MOOC had to take the same examination as the students who were sitting in such a room and taking the regular course. This allows immediate credentialization. Another partner university of applied sciences validates the recognition of the MOOC-based modules of Kiron through oral and written examinations they take in order to check the learning outcomes that we intend to reach through the educational settings that we provide for our students. We are talking a lot about the European dimension here, but transfer guidance is not only on the European level, not only on the national level, but with the example of Germany, especially also on the state and the university level, a really, really big challenge. And our students do not understand that. So guidance to students, expectation management on what can actually be achieved through which pathways is a challenge that is never ending. And Germany, I think, is just one of the examples out there where you have different legal requirements, where you have a strong university autonomy as opposed to governments implementing curricula, what we heard today before, where actually you have to provide individualized support in order to have successful transfers for our students. We're working on that together with our more than 40 partner universities, and I think key is that we are working on that together, and I hope that out of this conference and this meeting also some more joint approaches towards recognition of prior learning, successful transfer, and in the very end, successful degrees of refugees who are highly capable will be made possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Florian. First, I want to ask Fiona and Selma if you can approach Anders in the front row so you can get your microphones. You were talking about recognition of MOOCs. I think we should address the audience with just that question. So grab your notes, your red and green sheets. And the question for you is, would you recognize MOOC or MOOC-based learning? Would you recognize MOOC or MOOC-based learning? And if you would, you use your green notes, of course, and if you wouldn't, you use your red ones. Mostly green notes, big majority of green notes. It's a would. It's not a could. A would. Would you do that? Yeah, okay, then it's a green one. Okay, so how do you comment on this? Mostly green ones?
That looks amazing to me. Maybe another question I can relate to that is, do you already recognize MOOC-based learning within your curricula? Or an example is I've accredited the Estonian political and teacher education a year ago. They just had it as part of their modules. You know, you have a module, Introduction to Pedagogy, and one ECTS is a MOOC from edX. Who of you already has MOOCs as part of your regular curricula?
Use the green one if you have.
The green one if you have it.
Yeah. Well, people are not sure, I think.
I encourage you to do so.
Yeah, okay. That's perfect. Do I have a question? We can squeeze in one short question from the audience. Yes, in the front row. Do we have a microphone? David.
Thanks. I mean, I think it goes without saying that Kiron's a very inspiring and excellent model, and you've done fantastic work. But I just wanted to ask, there's a couple of things that worried me. One was that in your good practice example of the student who's done really well, you mentioned 5 months for the procedure for recognition, which is beyond the Lisbon Recognition Convention 4-month limit. So, and that's for your best practice example. So there still seem to be some issues with recognition in the German context. And related to that, I was wondering, have you not got also German universities providing MOOCs? And is there, because you mentioned a lot of English language MOOC provision, but I was wondering, have you got the German universities involved in the provision side?
Yeah.
So you give us the short version of the answer now, and then you can elaborate during the dinner afterwards.
Okay,
yeah?
two quick answers. Regarding German MOOCs, it's a key question of a project we are doing with the German Federal Ministry of Education, is offering German language MOOCs with English subtitles, because there is a high demand of our students also to have it as part of their language learning, because what most of our students do during the studies with Kiron is they learn the local language, of course, because it's key for integration. So we do that, RWTH Aachen, it is German, even the examinations are in German, which was quite of a challenge, but we could focus, we got over it through study weekends where we had mentors also working on that. Yes, and we think it is also key for integration that you balance it out. The other question, the first question, the 5 month. There is a key difference between our partner universities. Some want to admit students to the first semester and then they just get admitted to the first semester, which was the case with Ahmad. and there was time for the recognition afterwards. With other universities, they follow the approach that they do the recognition actually before the immatriculation, what is that in English? So that our students can enter in a higher semester and therefore are more likely to enter. With this university, it was not that big of a trouble because he was in the program. That was key first. The application, and we heard about that today, this went through successfully within quite a fast process, and then we didn't need to push that much on it. Of course, we want to work on making it quicker, and also through the funding of the German Federal Ministry and in cooperation with Bertelsmann Foundation, we're currently working on the automation of recognition and transfer processes. And there are quite interesting approaches within Germany, but I think also, for example, the European Students' Union just recently published a tool that on the European level also looks for solutions to make these processes faster, and I am sure they can be made faster.
Okay, thank you. A warm applause.
Thank you very much.